Hi there, my name is Junaid Islam, and I am once again with Mr. Corey Gray, the head of the Smart City Council. For those of you who saw our dinner in San Francisco a month ago, unfortunately, as you can tell, I am here in California, and Corey is sitting in a fantastic hotel pool in Dubai. How's it going, Corey?
I'm not near the pool, Junaid. I haven't had a chance to get that far. It's
Okay.
been pretty busy down here. Yeah, since I saw you, well, we caught up in Silicon Valley, then back down to Australia, up to Singapore last week, over to Paris with the OECD Smart Cities Roundtable, and then back here to Dubai for the World Free Zone uh, Congress, and up to London tomorrow and across to Holland next week. So it's a busy time of year from a lot of different angles.
So, I really have to ask you from a smart city perspective. Obviously, OECD has been involved in a lot of global scale financial transactions, really development on a worldwide basis. And, it has not been without controversy. There's been a lot of issues about their planning structure, how these deals are put together. So let me ask you first from a smart city perspective, what did you think about your time with OECD?
Good observation and a good question. As an organization, we are starting to get much closer with organizations like OECD. One thing I would say is if you take on difficult problems, sometimes it's not so easy to succeed as if you are out doing simple things. The OECD seems to take on and has necessarily taken on a lot of complicated things. So it is a bit easy to see failure. I've been acknowledging what you've said. I was really impressed with the way, firstly, there's an emphasis on quote unquote smart cities. I was very pleased that they've picked up our smart cities initiative for regional and remote and now indigenous communities was an outcome of the meeting last week. They're very excited to work and collaborate with us in these areas. As I pointed out to the Congress, we have 46% of our population not living in cities. I don't think that means we don't have to think about them. So, and there are important consequences for cities once we start thinking about the people outside of them, because the best solution for a lot of cities is to have fewer people, not be prepared for more. I think Marcus Aurelius said the secret to happiness is not how to find out to get the things you want, but how to find out how to be happy with the things you have.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think putting a different trajectory on that is really important. The discussion was really interesting. I mean, by its very name, the Office of Economic Cooperation and Development focuses on economics, but by our very mission, we focus on the societal and environmental and economic issues. And like you and I have discussed, if you get too out of whack with one of those, you end up with an industrial revolution where everyone's got money, but no one sees their friends or their family, and the rivers are glowing in
So,
the
so
dark.
what,
You
what,
need a
one question I
balance.
have one of the biggest issues in smart cities is at the end of the day, it always seems that the big multinationals, the system integrators, construction companies make all the money, but the people who pay the taxes carry the burden, not only through short-term funds, but also through long-term bond underwritings where they're the guarantor. Was there any discussion or progress on this issue of the financial burden that smart cities creates on citizens?
Well, from our point at least, I again raised the point that we need to be measuring our progress not by how much money we spend, but what impact that money creates. There's a great willingness, because it's a simple message in politics and in public discourse, to simply say we've invested X dollars on something as if that is somehow producing an outcome. I think to your point, we've talked about Haiti before, that $3 billion got them nothing, right? So I raised the point that we need a social impact index for what we do as social impact organizations, logically, and that we need to be making sure that we don't just measure the impact to a community, but we also measure how that impact is distributed across that community. And I think of
Yeah.
a couple of cities which are championing their economic activation and their economic miracle. One of them is Barcelona, but that money is arriving with very few people. And if you look at San Francisco, as we have, 70 people have more money than the $3.5 billion poorest on the planet, and there are people passed out in the street, and there's a homelessness and crime pandemic. So you got to ask yourself, not in aggregate, what are we achieving, but looking to all corners of those communities.
Yeah. So right now, of course, you're in Dubai at the world. Sorry, is it called the free
World
zone?
Free Zone
Okay.
Organization Congress. So special economic zones designed to attract foreign direct investment. There's about 7,000 around the world, I've come to know, and mostly to allow, developing and third world countries to create regulatory and economic frameworks that foster foreign direct investment to hopefully help provide socially and environmentally transformative outcomes through innovative economic instruments.
So, one question I have is obviously the Emirates and Dubai, their success in smart cities has not been without controversy in terms of the level of security, how they take care of workers. I mean, it's from a smart city community, as we represent all stakeholders, which includes the workers. Do you have any thoughts, now that you're there and, meeting people? What are your thoughts in terms of the balance or their approach? I mean, they definitely have an approach, and, from one perspective, you could say it works, right?
Hmm.
Uh, but I guess the question is, does the world need to be more like Dubai and Singapore, or, kind of what are your thoughts?
I think we always talk about the benevolent dictatorship being the most effective form of government. Let me quickly go sideways, but come back to answering your point. There's a big discussion in the States about pulling down, for example, Confederate monuments and anything that reminds us of pre-Civil War and slavery. By that same argument, you would pull down the St. Peter's Basilica in Rome that was built on the bones of slaves. You would pull down the Colosseum in Rome. You would destroy whole parts of history. So let's premise that by saying, if you look at two countries that I think are the best, or two of three best performing in terms of quote unquote smart cities and safety, which is the preeminent aspect that we use to measure, to parameter that we use to consider whether a city is quote unquote safe or not. Singapore, Dubai, and I would say Copenhagen and probably Helsinki are in there, both with very different organizational structures. Singapore could move so fast because it has a very flat government structure. There is one level of government, and it is a highly competent, people are recruited, with salaries equivalent to the private sector to be good at what they do and deliver outcomes. An example, if you look at the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, its half-year results, it produced 138 billion US dollars of profit for its 5.8 million citizens. Now, if you're a citizen of Norway, you're very happy with your government, right? If they ask for a bit more tax, you'll probably give it to them, and you'll say, pay that guy 10 million, not 5, or girl, or whoever that's running it, because this is working for me. Every year I get 50,000 US dollars before I start working, right? This is
So
incredible.
I guess and here's the difficult question that adds to this difficult issue. From one lens, we could just say, Singapore and Dubai represent very successful models that we could focus on. But from another perspective, and I say this not just because I live in Silicon Valley, but if you look at innovation on a global scale, and if you look at the San Francisco area, we definitely have a lot of problems in terms of the homeless in San Francisco, crime, garbage. But the flip side, it is a totally free society. As you know, Corey comes and visits me, we have plenty of drinks and it's totally free. So, but in terms of innovation though, I would challenge I would challenge the entire global community to equal the sheer number of established companies doing innovative work, whether it's the big ones we know like Apple and Google and Meta, or even the 10,000 or 50,000 startups, depending on how you count them. So I guess here's the tricky part. If we look from a pure security perspective, as you said, where is it safe to walk at night? You'd probably say Dubai and Singapore. On the other hand, if you really wanted to create the innovation to solve these really smart city problems, it would be hard pressed not to pick the San Francisco, Silicon Valley area. So there's something deeper that
This
I
is
think we don't understand.
this is the Churchillian trade-off of democracy. I think Winston Churchill said it's the worst form of government except all the others. So it goes
Yeah.
like this. If you have an organizational structure like Singapore, which is democratic, but from a legacy of autocracy as it needed to be at the time, or if you look at Dubai, very distinct from the other regions of the United Emirates, the other emirs, you have a ruler. Now, that ruler makes decisions, which means you can move fast. It means that you can be effective. But what you also have is a very strong stratification of class. You have the ruling class, you have the executive class, and you have the working class, and some would call it an underclass. Now, in Singapore now, that underclass can live very happily. You can live in Singapore with $30,000 or $40,000 a year. You can go to the hawkers markets. You can eat for $3 or $4, great food. You can travel safely. You can travel on the MRT. You can live in a good apartment, or you can be a billionaire and you can live safely and do all of those things and pay your taxes through VAT. When you buy a car, you pay $1 million tax on a Ferrari, right? Your decision. You're the billionaire. You decide to buy it or not, right? It's a little different here. So social transformation has to be on the agenda. Like, society is always a work in progress. Rome came and went. Egypt came and went. The Sumerians came and went. There's an argument that America's coming and going, depending how you look at it, right? So we've got to ask ourselves the question, not just how much aggregate wealth are we generating, but how are we distributing that to communities, right? And at the moment, the distribution of wealth is deeply unbalanced here. But there's another more complex argument, and I've been talking to some of the workers in the hotels and the convention centers because that's what I do. They're happier earning $12,000 or $13,000 here than they are earning $3,000 in Bangladesh. So, one of the big exports out of here is people earning 4 times they ever could have dreamed of in their home country and sending that back and looking after their families. And I can tell you, no one here is properly enslaved, and it's controversial but real. If I'm in Colombo, you see the infrastructure projects that the Chinese build, and they have actually indentured labor and imprisoned people doing the work. That's not happening here. There are people earning a lot less, but they get to go home at night and they get to be with their families and earn a lot more than they ever did. San Francisco is very different because you've got almost all of the money. Like, I saw a statistic, I think 60% of the VC money in the world is around that place, right?
Yeah.
And you've got people lying in the street and licking the walls and rolling around on the sidewalk on fentanyl and petty crimes out of control and violent crimes escalating. So it's this strange, the more power you give to the people, the more, it's a risk reward scenario socially, I think sometimes.
So it looks like certainly there's a lot of complex issues that we need to address. And I guess one of the things you're planning to do is come back to San Francisco to, I guess, pull together a lot of smart people and discuss these issues of finance, security, and then, technology development or technology inclusion.
Three will be in San Francisco. We're breaking it into those. The way we consider our organization is with X, Y, and Z coordinates. Our X's are our domain areas of expertise. So we'll be talking about regional communities, airports, tourism, healthcare, digital equity, homelessness, mobility, and then our Y coordinates are our technology horizontals like AI, machine learning, blockchain, digital twins, digital infrastructure, cyber, and then we're bringing the world together in our Z coordinate, which is geozone. So trade, investments, capital markets, startups fall into that category. So this is a way that people find easier to navigate our organization as we grow geographically and in terms of areas of subject matter interest. And we'll be bringing, the big organizations like Digital Twin Consortium, leading cities, BizTech, the OECD is very interested to be present, UN Habitat. So it's good to have that.
Well, I look forward to meeting you once again in San Francisco in February of 2025 with a world-class team of technologists and advocates from around the world. So, Corey, thanks for taking a break from your busy trip and talking about what's going on in the smart city world.